Hey guys, welcome to What's Out There. I'm your host, Grimm Webster, and today's episode was supposed to be about that demon possession case in Indiana. You've probably heard about it. Well, unfortunately, tonight we're not going to be doing that, but we will be bringing it back next week, so don't worry. Now, this week, my mostly ghostly co-host, Tyler, has had something incredible happen over the weekend, so we came to the decision to talk about that instead. So here we go with this week's episode of What's Out There.
Hey, how you doing?
How's it going?
Uh, Going all right.
So, you had a pretty interesting weekend.
Yeah, this is definitely one I'm going to remember for a while. But I think I should start off with kind of a backstory
Okay.
to understand how this affects my family the way it is. When my uncle, well, my dad was 15 at this time, so my uncle was probably my age, about 19 or 20, and he was into some bad stuff. He was breaking into cars. He was doing a lot of drugs, having a lot of sex and all that. And he had his friend over one night named Slim. They called him Slim Jim because he was real tall. But he came over and they were sleeping in the living room at my grandparents' house. And my uncle talks a lot in his sleep. And he was talking so loud this night I woke Slim up, and he looked over. And standing over top of my uncle was this kid, maybe 3 or 4 years old, that was completely white, like an albino,
Mm.
that was looking down at him, talking into his mouth, like real close. I'm talking real fast, like blah, 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 he couldn't understand what he was saying. It scared him, understandably. So he screamed. So when he screamed, this kid looks up at him, and he says he only had whites. He didn't have any pupils or anything. It was just the whites of his eyes. And then floated out, looked at him, then floated out the window, just up and floated out the window. Well, when he screamed, my grandparents came out to the living room, turned on all the lights and everything was covered in this fine white dust, kind of like when you touch a moth's wing. My dad said he remembers picking up his leather jacket and shaking it off the jacket. Well, my uncle woke up and was telling him about this dream that he had where that same kid was chasing him all the way this through his old school in Hilliard, Ohio,
Mm.
and he had to jump this big wooden fence, and he was running to the back door of his house, and he said he looked back, and the kid just floated over the fence, and he had his hand on the door and was trying to get inside, and right as he turned around and looked, the kid was right behind him about to grab him, and that's when Slim screamed and woke everybody up.
Okay.
So the family knew this guy. I don't remember what his name is. I never met him, but he was kind of a medium. They got together. They had a séance, and he said that what was trying to get him that night was a demon. And he said that he could see the demon now was attached to my uncle, and that it did not like my dad at all. It kept growling at him, snapping, like biting its teeth at him. He said that they needed to do an exorcism. So my grandparents made my dad get out of the house and all that, or he sat in another room, and they put themselves all into one room. And he said they were in there for about an hour, and then all of a sudden, every door in the house opened up, and it was like a big gust of wind went through the house, and then everything was calm. And that was what they thought was the last of that.
Now,
So
was this
go ahead.
was the exorcism? Was that just kind of like? I mean, did they have anybody from the church come in to do that, or was it just kind of read the passage from the Bible type stuff?
I believe they had a Catholic priest come in.
Okay. Now, was it like I know in order to actually like really perform an exorcism, they have to get permission from a bishop or something like that. Was it one like that, or was it more of a like a small scale exorcism? Because I guess there's different levels.
Yeah, I think it was just a small scale thing. I think a priest came in on the medium's advice and just blessed him, and that was that. I don't
Okay.
know a whole lot about it. It's just something I heard secondhand, but that's the story, as it goes from what they said.
Okay.
Well, fast forward to this weekend. I mean, this happened, whew, probably back in the 80s, but this weekend I live in Cleveland. My grandma lives down in Columbus. I rode with my dad down there. The first time I'd ever been to her house down there because she just moved there. So I'm down there. We've been talking back and forth about how my grandma had seen her mother, um, just other things like that. And so I'm a little bit freaked out because I don't like to think about that stuff right before I go to bed, but it wasn't really bothering me. I laid down, um, since we were tight on rooms. My dad slept up on the bed. I slept on the floor in this room. And I was just having a hard time sleeping for some reason, but I didn't chalk it up to anything because, just being at a different house, I have a hard time sleeping sometimes.
Hmm.
But it was 2:30 in the morning. I woke up because somebody grabbed my foot and like I felt something yank on me. And my dad said when he woke up, I was screaming and kicking so loud he was surprised I didn't wake up the entire house. I mean, you don't really know me, but that's not something I've ever done before. I mean, I talked to my entire family and I said that's just not something I do. But I laughed about it. I was like, yeah, I probably had a night terror. Sometimes I panic a little bit when I wake up and don't know where I'm at. It
Okay.
was maybe a nightmare. Well, that next day, I left about 2 o'clock in the afternoon to go have dinner with my mom's side of the family. Came back about 9 o'clock that night, and we have this cousin who was born with a cowl over her face, like a veil, like that thin membrane that's supposed to give you second sight.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I've heard
apparently,
about that.
yeah, apparently she sees and talks to the dead a lot. Like it's something that she can't even help and she doesn't like. She hates it. But they all, I guess, were talking back in my grandma's bedroom for probably 2 hours that night while I was gone. And she started off by saying that, oh, this is a big one that I didn't tell you about in my thing. She had my uncle, my dad, my aunt, and my grandma all in the room, and she said, her name's Janine. She said, you have to tell them, or she said, I have to tell you guys that you're not allowed to do anything about this. This is coming from Darlene, which is my grandma's sister. So they all go, okay, well, we're not going to do anything about it. She said that her husband had murdered her. She died of complications from cancer and heart disease. She
Okay.
said her husband had killed her. And so they're all like, well, how could that happen? She said that the last time they were down at my grandparents' house, her husband had switched her heart pills with some of my grandpa's, which gave her complications and killed her.
Hmm.
And her husband, right after my Aunt Darlene died, remarried another woman immediately. She said that he and that woman have been planning this since December. She died in December, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. They said, or she said that that they had been planning that since the December before that for a full year to kill her.
Wow.
And I mean, she gave them details that, I mean, there's no way she can know about this stuff. I mean, she's not very close to the family. I mean, she comes over for family functions and stuff, but she feels, which I wish she wouldn't, but she feels like she's kind of an outsider because of what she sees.
How old is she?
Um, I don't really know because I've only met her once. I think she's in her mid-20s. She's a younger person. I mean, she's not a whole lot older than me. My dad remembers her when she was little,
And
and he's 38.
and she's
So
been
I
able
mean,
to do this forever?
yeah, since she was a little kid apparently.
Wow.
And after she got done with that, um, let's see, what did she say next? She was talking to my dad, and I've posted on Paranormal before about some stuff that has been seen in my house, and I may have mentioned it on here before. But my dad and my stepmom both see this old woman that stands in the corner of their room. She doesn't do anything. She just stands there and looks. Well, apparently, when my dad was was a little boy, she used to live in this house, but for some reason she was down in Columbus visiting some relatives or something, and met my dad at this grocery store and tried to give him a piece of fruit, and my grandma was mean to her and told him not to take it. Well, for whatever reason, she liked my dad and passed away not long after that. And she stuck to my dad ever since. He lived in North Carolina after that, and all the way through. And she said when they found out, or she said that when she found out that we were able to move, that they were able to move up to this area to live up here, she kept giving them the like hints to take this house because she wanted them to live here because she knew they would take care of the house. Now at this point, I could say that there's, she might be making stuff up and all that. But then she started talking about me and stuff that I've only ever met her once, and when I met her, I didn't talk to her because I thought she was full of crap, honestly. I was like, because I thought she was trying to scare my grandma, and I couldn't figure out why, and it bothered me, so I just stayed away from her because she was down there when my grandpa was dying. But she said to my dad, she said, "You have a son named Tyler." Doesn't know me. I never even introduced myself to her. He goes, "Yeah." She goes, "Something grabbed a hold of his leg last night, didn't it?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "That was his Aunt Darlene. She wants to tell him to stop drinking." I go, that scared me a little bit. Because, I kind of don't like to admit this, but I've been drinking a lot lately, and I can see where I would probably need to cut back on that. And she said, "Stay away from the country boy whose name starts with a D. He's gonna be trouble for him." Now, the only person I can think of is my buddy Derek, who, straight up country boy. There's no other way to describe him, really. And, I've been noticing that he's been getting into some bad stuff recently. So she would have no idea that I would be friends with somebody like that. There's a whole lot of coincidences all lining up. My grandpa came through, and he told my aunt, he said, and these are mannerisms, exactly what he would say. This isn't, and Janine never really met him before this, so she wouldn't know how he would talk or anything. She said that she was talking to my aunt, she said, "Your dad says to quit sticking your nose in the air and remember where you came from." Because my aunt has been doing this thing where she's she moved into the city and away from the country where everybody else grew up.
Okay.
And got herself a job and kind of separated herself away from the family. She's making good money now, and she thinks that she can't, be around us anymore because of who we are. And he said, "I don't like the high ceilings in your house." He'd never been to her house, and Janine had never been to her house. And then my dad said, "How often?" He said, "How often is my dad here at my house with me?" And she said, "He's there every second of every day." And he said, "What about when I'm out in the garage? Is he out there?" He said, every time you're out in the garage, he's out there with you." And my dad said he's felt him out there before. He said he was getting aggravated at an old Camaro he was working on once. And he felt him pull him out of the car, physically grab a hold of him, pull him out because he was getting too mad about something.
Wow.
And she's talking about all this and going back and forth. And this is where things really started to pick up. She looks at my Uncle Don, and she goes, "What is that doing there?" And she says, "I'm getting real cold." And she pulled her hoodie together and put up the hood and was shivering and crying, saying, "What is that doing here? I have to get out of here. I have to get out of here." And she wasn't looking directly at my Uncle Don. She was looking over his right shoulder. She said, "There is a demon attached to you." and it doesn't like your wife and it doesn't like your brother because they're not afraid of it. She said that there was on the property that he lived in. She said there's a cellar door next to where your pumps are. She's never been there. She said there's a cellar door next to where your pumps are, aren't there? He said yes. And she said back before your house was built, there was a man that lived in that property that killed many people and buried them there. She said in your house, the downstairs master bedroom, somebody was hung in, and in the downstairs master bath, somebody was drowned in.
Wow.
Yeah, she says there's 3 demons there. There's 2 male demons and 1 female demon. The female demon is trying to get a hold of your daughter, and one of the male ones has attached to you. And so, I mean, he said as soon as I wasn't there for this. My dad said as soon as she said this, my uncle turned bright red and his knees buckled underneath him. My uncle said it felt like something that weighed 200 pounds jumped on his chest and was trying to push him down into the bed. So my dad's sitting there, and I mean, my dad has seen this all before, and he's making these connections in his mind, and he's sitting there, going at it in his mind. He goes, just thinking, he goes, why don't you come after me? I'll tear you apart. Why don't, he's antagonizing it. And Janine looks at him and says, stop it. He hasn't said a word. He goes, what? She says, stop antagonizing him. You're not making it any better. She says, he's laughing at you, and that is not a good thing. She says he's very nervous, and that is not a good thing for any of us here. And she said she gave them the name of the demon and all that, which I don't know. I don't want to know. It's very bad luck to say that out loud. But she said we can't keep talking about this because the more we talk about it, the more he's wanting to jump on me, and I can't have that. I can't have him with me. So Don went to leave the room, and she said, don't do that. He goes, why? He said, if you leave the room right now, he'll leave you forever. And Don was like, well, okay. He said, but now it's laughing because it says, if you leave the room, it'll attach to your daughter and he'll never leave her. So my uncle sent my cousin straight out of the room. He said, you can't be in here anymore. So then she said that this demon has been trying to put a wedge between him and his wife. And ever since Christmas, my uncle has been getting this thought in his head that my aunt's been cheating on him, which she has not been. It's just not in her character at all. And they've had so many arguments about it. And she said, she's not cheating on you. You need to open your eyes and see that. I mean, my uncle never, ever talked to her about this. The only person he ever talked to about it was my aunt and my dad. So there's no way he could have known about this, or she could have known about this. She said, you need to be strong and not accuse her of these kinds of things, because that's not what she's doing. It's trying to drive a wedge between you two. She's the only thing that's really keeping it at bay right now. So they eventually they all freaked out. Here's another thing that completely blew my mind because nobody in the family talks about this. She said she looked at my dad. This was before all the demon. I got kind of ahead of myself. She said she looked at my dad and my uncle and she said, you two don't have the same dad. And my dad goes, yeah, how do you know that? She says there's 2 grandpas here. There's my uncle's grandpa, and then there's Grandpa Seymour, which was my dad's mom's dad. She said that my uncle's grandpa was mad with my grandma because she wouldn't let his son see my uncle, and that she wouldn't let him wouldn't let him be part of their family. And my uncle spoke up and said, well, if he wanted to see me, I was a baby, he very well could have come and seen me. He didn't ever make the attempt to. And then she said right after that, he took off. The grandpa took off. But that's something that never gets discussed in our family. That's just not anything that's ever. I mean, I only know about it because my dad's told me about it once. It's just,
It's just one of those subjects that
yeah,
they stay away from.
right.
Right.
Well, he I mean, that's just one of those things that just adds up. Like, how would she know this? Well, everybody leaves the room after that, and when she does this, she gets real sick. So she went home. She said, "I got to get out of here." When my uncle walked past her baby flipped out and started crying, and I mean uncontrollably, like she was real scared of him. So she got her kids together, she got her husband, and she left. She was out of there. She didn't want to be around that anymore. But she called my stepmom on the phone, who was up here in Cleveland. She didn't go down there with us. And she started talking to her about our house up here. She started talking about Opal, that old woman. You know, she said that there's nothing bad in our house, at least not anymore. She said, my grandpa's up here, Opal's here, and every once in a while a spirit will wander in and out, but that's about it. There's nothing really bad here anymore. But she said that my stepmom's brother's here, and if you remember, I one of the first interviews we did, I told you that I saw my stepmom's brother look into my room one of the first times I'd ever stayed up here.
Yeah, I think that was the first time you were on.
Yeah, I was laying in my bed. My bed's actually exactly where it was when I saw this now. And my door was open. I was about to fall asleep, and he looked around the corner at me, and then he went back. I didn't feel scared or anything. He was there and gone. But she said, when your dog, he said, no, she said, your brother's here with me now talking to me. He said, when your dog sees something and is acting weird, it's him that he's seeing. She doesn't know that we have dogs. She doesn't know that they act weird or anything like that, because she's never been up here. She just doesn't know that kind of stuff. So there's that whole aspect of it. But I guess they talked for hours and hours about stuff like this. I don't remember all what they talked about, but it was pretty much, all the same thing. Now, back down in Columbus where I was at, around that time, things were starting to get kind of freaky. My grandma, this was right before I got back, my grandma said, "Lord help my son get through this." And all the lights in the house flickered, went off, then back on. And not long after that, I get home. My dad takes me back to the bedroom, gets me all caught up on all this. And so we go back out, and we're all talking about this, just about what we should do, if we need to go see a priest, which we actually did today, and all that. And we're sitting there talking, and I hear footsteps coming from behind me. And the way the house is laid out, like you have the back door, then at a 90-degree angle to that, there's a basement door. So the wall kind of comes out about 4 or 5 feet and then goes forward. So there's room for the stairwell to go down. And I was like, well, what is that? It's coming from the basement. So we all run downstairs. And my cousin, I said, hey, go back upstairs and sit down where you were before. And I walked up the stairs, and I mean, I had to walk fast to make the same sound. She said, that's exactly what it was. That's the exact same sound. Something walked up the stairs, but never opened the door. Now, in the past few months, my I'm sorry, my timeline's kind of all over the place, but this is like all jumbled up in my head. But over the past few months, there's been this really rotten, dead smell in my aunt and uncle's house. I've never felt comfortable there. For something about it, I've never been able to sleep easy there. And I remember one time I was down there, I was in their basement, I looked over, it's sectioned off into 2 rooms. I looked over into the other room, and I saw someone walk back there. I went in there, I turned on the light, and I looked around, and there was nobody in there. Well, I guess my Uncle Paul had been down there, a different uncle. I've talked about my Uncle Paul before.
Yeah.
He was laying down there on the couch, and this is the reason he doesn't sleep in the basement anymore. He said one night he was down there and he saw a figure standing in the doorway where I saw the figure at, and then it backed up away from him as soon as he opened his eyes. And he said about a week later he saw another figure and that same first figure both looking at him through the doorway, and they both took off as soon as he opened his eyes.
Wow.
So what I'm thinking is that those might be the spirits of those people that were buried down there. But my uncle, um, not Paul, the other uncle, has been hearing footsteps in the house a lot, and they've been having this horrible dead stench that just comes and goes randomly.
Does he have any plans to like do any research or uh
Yeah, yeah, I'll get to that.
okay.
That's actually a big thing that happened last night also. Um, but like the other night, he was sitting in his recliner, which was at the bottom of the stairs that go upstairs to the second floor, and he heard somebody coming down the stairs behind him to the point where he thought that somebody was in the house, that his daughter or his wife were in the house with him when he thought that they had left. And he turned around and said, "Hey, who's up there?" And there was nobody there. He plain as day heard the footsteps come down the stairs and stopped just out of sight from him. And he said he's been having these thoughts that like get invasive to him, like she's got to be cheating on me, this and that. Janine said that this demon wants him to recreate the murders that happened in this house.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and that's straight up Amityville horror stuff right there.
Yeah, yeah.
She said you cannot go back there. So he can't go back there, but I can. His wife can, and his daughter can. So we all go back there to get his stuff because he has to have medicine. So we all head back there, and the entire way there, I'm getting this feeling in my stomach like I'm about to throw up. And as soon as we pull in the driveway, I see the curtain. He lives out in the middle of nowhere. I see the curtain on his window pull back and then close like there's somebody inside that checked to see who was outside. Nobody was home. So we get inside and are immediately hit with this dead stench. Just horrible, horrible smell. But we had already had a plan set up. We knew where we were going. We wanted to get in and out as quick as we could. So we go upstairs. We go to my cousin's room. We got everything out of there that she needed. Went into the bathroom, got everything out of there they needed. Went into my aunt and uncle's room. Got all their stuff. And then we head back downstairs as fast. We were out there for maybe all of 5 minutes and packed up 3 suitcases. And so we go downstairs and go into the downstairs bathroom where somebody was drowned before. And as I'm sitting, I made it a point to stand in every doorway that they were in so nothing could shut them into the room.
Right.
So I'm standing there in the doorway and I look out, and from the bathroom you can see through the kitchen to their dining room. And I see the lights moving in there. I'm like, well, what's, up against the wall? I said, well, what is that? What's shining up against the wall like that? So I go in there, and they have like one of those electric chandeliers that just a little small one that hangs over the dining room table. It was spinning back and forth real slow, like somebody had a hold of it and was moving it. And I called my cousin over, and she said, I didn't say anything. We had a agreement not to say anything until we were off the property. I just looked at it, and she saw what I was seeing, and she said, all right, let's hurry up and get out of here. So after that, they went back downstairs, down into the basement, and I stood upstairs so the door wouldn't shut on them. And they got all their stuff, and my cousin said she kept hearing a woman's voice down there. So they, got their stuff together, hurried up, and came back upstairs. And by the time we got back into the dining room, it had stopped moving. Well, so we piled everything up by the door. I'm like, all right, let's do one more sweep through, turn off all the lights. So I went over to the bottom of the stairs to turn off the hallway light. As soon as I turned it off, the upstairs hallway light, as soon as I turned it off and turned around, I felt something tug at my shirt tail. So I just kept on walking. Then, I felt my back. My aunt saw like something held me back, and she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'll tell you later." So we get everything up. We're about to walk outside, and right before I open the door, I look left into the living room again, and I see a big black mass in the middle of their floor, couldn't have been any more than 2 feet high, but it was wide. It took up almost the entire center of their floor. So I'm like, okay, let's get going. My aunt said before she left, she looked back at the chandelier and it was moving again, but faster. And we all left outside. And my cousin said as soon as she got out the door, she looked through the window and she said she saw somebody standing back behind the curtain looking through it.
Wow.
So finally, we all get back up inside. We all leave, and we get back to the house. And so throughout the night, my aunt, that's married to my uncle there, had been looking up all this stuff on the internet. She said somebody named Charlie had committed all the murders. She's looking back into the 1920s. The house wasn't built into the 50s. She's looking back in the 1920s at Charlie Miller and Charlie Grubb that had both lived on that area, that apparently were both not liked very much by the community. So she wasn't sure which one it is. They're gonna try to do more research into it. But I said, if he was never caught, there's no way they would ever know.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be any news reports or newspaper articles or anything about it. So it could have been either one of them. But there were people named Charlie in that area, and they were both hated by the community, and this was both before the house was built. I don't remember if they found anything out about something actually happening inside the house or not, because I was kind of trying to distance myself from it at this point. But last night, I didn't sleep at all. I didn't get to sleep until about 6:30 in the morning.
Wow.
When I finally got up, it was like 9:30 in the morning. I didn't get hardly any sleep. My uncle went to a priest. My dad went with him. He said as soon as he walked into that church, my uncle's face turned beet red, like there was something that just really bothered him about being in there. He went up to the priest, and the priest, they were talking to the priest about what was happening. The priest said, "I absolutely believe you." The priest baptized him right there, and he gave him a whole jar full of holy water and gave him some prayers to say around the house. He said, "Now that you've been baptized, nothing can touch you." And we hadn't been in contact with Janine about any of this. And we gave her a call, and she said, "Oh, good." Before we even said anything, she said, "Oh, good. There's nothing attached to him anymore. I can't feel anything."
So she can feel that stuff even over the phone then.
Yeah. It's like kind of like it projects onto her.
Wow.
So I mean, I'm sure there was something I'm missing out on here, but that was the gist of it.
That is pretty amazing. Have they? I mean, when they were going back and looking up the history, and if he never got caught, you said, then obviously they wouldn't know. But I mean, did they dig anything up on like unexplained disappearances in the area or anything like that?
No, it was mainly tax records and all that. But I can't remember how they came to the conclusion that they weren't really liked in the community, but I don't think they saw anything that would have told them about any kind of disappearances, especially that far back. They said it was in the early 1920s.
Okay.
Yeah, and this, I mean, right after I found out that it was my Aunt Darlene that grabbed me, I said out loud, I said, "Hey, next time you want to tell me something, can you please do it when I'm awake?" Because I've never been so terrified in my life. I've seen things, I've heard things, I've never been touched by anything before. My entire foot was numb for about 20 or 30 minutes after that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I like to post like a written experience about this, write it out and post it onto Paranormal, but there's so many people on there that are just, well, why didn't you set up a camera? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that?
That's always the first question people ask too.
And I have a feeling that people that ask that have never had anything paranormal happen to them in their entire life.
Right.
Because that's not the first thing that comes to your mind. I mean, your first thought is, how am I going to deal with this? It was a very terrifying experience for all of us there.
Right. And it's just it's human nature, really. I mean, in in response to any sort of situation, whether it be anything from like a car crash to what you had happen, I mean, the human mind works in a specific order, and the first reaction you have is an emotional one. So you don't come to logic until like two or three steps later.
Right.
I would imagine by then it's probably too late.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. My dad said, I wish I would have recorded what she was saying because I would have liked to go back and listen to it. But I mean, in that situation, he went into it thinking that she was full of crap, and he came out a full believer.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I tried to get a hold of her today, but she wasn't one to message me back about anything, and
Right,
she wasn't one to talk to me.
man.
I think that's because of that thing that scared her so bad. She said, "I can't have this on me. I can't look at it. I have to get out of here."
Wow.
I don't think she wanted to come back until he had been blessed and all that. It was a very eventful weekend.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm gonna ask a very selfish question.
All right,
What do you think the odds are we could get her to come on the show?
Janine,
Yeah,
very, very low.
I figured you would
Unfortunately,
say that.
like I said, she's very, very shy about her abilities. Like if there's somebody that she knows that's around that's a skeptic, she usually won't say anything at all
Wow.
about anything. She's she feels very ostracized about it. You know, she feels like she shouldn't be around it or around people that get afraid about it. She doesn't want to freak anybody out. She doesn't, and the people she doesn't like she just wants to fit in.
Right,
Just so I doubt that she would want to get on this show and talk about that.
right. Well, there's a whole community of people that would welcome her in, but I imagine it's probably not the community she wants to be a part of.
Right. And honestly, all it would take is one or two people to really, just be jerks to her like they are.
Mm.
And I mean, she's like she was telling my stepmom, she just hasn't ever had any friends because of this. I mean, she doesn't know how to talk to normal people because she just doesn't have the social skills anymore.
Wow.
It's just, I mean, she's married, she has kids, but she. Oh, another thing about her is that she won't go into a graveyard at all. She won't step foot into one.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, she says that they talk to her too much.
Yeah, it's always a shame when, somebody that has a gift feels ashamed of the gift. I mean, or maybe not ashamed, but you know what I mean, when they just feel bad about having it in general, or somebody makes them feel bad about being able to do something. Because honestly, that's a pretty amazing thing to be able to do.
Oh, here's something she said to my cousin a few weeks ago. Now, my cousin had been dating this guy that she'd known from North Carolina for a long time. Well, she had moved back down there for a little while, and at that point, her brother or not her brother, but his brother had gotten hit by a car right after he left a party that she was at and killed him. And she said that when she got the news, her knees buckled and she thought she was going to hit the ground, but she didn't. It was like there was something holding her up. Janine said, "Daniel's with you." She goes, "Daniel who?" She said, his last name. I don't want to say any last names on here.
Right.
She goes, "How long has he been with me?" She said, "Since the moment he died, he came right back to you. He's who caught you when your knees buckled." She had no idea about any of that. She had no idea that he had died or anything about that. And she said, "Well, she said when he wants you to know he's around, he'll move your phone a little bit." She said, "I have noticed that I'll put my phone down somewhere and it'll be across the table or something when I go to get it next. It'll be just out of reach." She said, "He's constantly protecting you because there's a bad man that's after you It's not one of the demons. And this goes back to, which I may have mentioned in one of my other interviews about this kind of stuff. My grandfather, back in the day, my grandpa got into reading palms. And and to do this, he learned it from somebody else. It's kind of like this curse that you had to pass on. He sold his firstborn grandson, which is me, for I mean, this is long before any of his kids were even thought of, but
Right.
for a clothespin. Well, once he met my grandma, he was like, I don't want any part of this anymore. So he passed it on to somebody else. Well, my grandpa was dying. Janine had seen this guy outside the house that he passed it on to, because when my grandpa passed it on to him, it caused this guy bad luck for the rest of his life. And he was there to see my grandpa suffer. I mean, my grandpa died in a very bad way. He was very sick. He was in a lot of pain when he died. But he said that now that my grandpa was gone, he was after my cousin, because he was his firstborn grandchild, and she was supposed to be a boy, but she came out a girl. So he's been after her, but my cousin's ex-boyfriend's brother, as crazy as that sounds, has been keeping him off. She said that Daniel was the one that got her boyfriend away from her and made him move back down to Carolina, because he was going to turn out to be an abusive husband. Which, I mean, I could see that coming, but Janine would have no idea about any of that. She never met this guy. So, I mean, there was that whole part of that. But Daniel was with her she said, Daniel is with you all the time, protecting you from this guy. And as long as he's with you, he can't do you any harm. So there's that whole part of that.
Yeah.
That was a very interesting weekend.
It sounds like it. Man.
I mean, like, thinking back, you want to try to think of a logical explanation, but I cannot explain for the life of me. And we all heard it, the footsteps coming up the stairs. There's just no explanation. We were all sitting there. I mean, the dining room and living room are like, there's just one big room pretty much, just separated by, I think it's a wooden floor and the carpet. And we were all sitting there, and we all heard it. I mean, all the way down to the end of the living room where my dad was sitting. He said, "What is that?" It's just very weird. And as soon as I get home, I came upstairs, and my dog starts looking in my closet and growling at something.
Really?
Yeah. Now she's sitting away from me like she's afraid of something.
Wow.
Come here. Yeah, well, I think she's just being a baby about something right now. But at the same time, she doesn't like most men. So, I mean, if it's my stepmom's brother or my grandpa, she might be afraid of him. Or she could just be weird. She's a weird dog.
It kind of seems to me like, I mean, this just happened to you over the weekend, and the show that we were originally going to do tonight was about demon possession in Indiana, right. And that story, I think we should get together next week and do that one, get back on the original schedule, if you're up for that.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, that one had credible witnesses like police and nurses and a psychiatrist, just a lot of people who saw all this crazy stuff. It's just, I don't know, it seems like lately a lot more stuff is happening, and I guess with more frequency, and just stuff that you can't rule out so much anymore.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention this. I mentioned at the tail end of one of our shows, probably my second or third time on, that my stepmom found the name Allie scratched into the dryer.
Yeah.
And it really freaked her out. Well, Janine got on the phone and she said, "Don't worry about Allie." My stepmom goes, "What?" She goes, "Opal scratched that name into the dryer. It's her granddaughter who died at a young age. and that your daughter, my sister, reminds her a lot of her granddaughter, and she goes in there and tucks her in every night.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. It's just you want to think of some kind of rational explanation for all this,
Right.
but you just can't.
Yeah, there's from what I hear, there's just too much unexplainable stuff. I mean, that you can't come up with anything short of everybody being in on it altogether.
Yeah,
I mean, and that's just, I don't know,
I mean,
pretty
we
close
would
to
have no
impossible.
motivation to do that.
Yeah.
We're not out to make money on a movie or sell a book or whatever. I mean, this literally just happened to us out of the blue, and we almost wish that she wouldn't have come over and told us all that. But I have a feeling that if we didn't, it would have caused some serious harm to my uncle, my aunt, and my cousin.
Well, yeah. I mean, without warning, what would have happened? You would have went back home, and those the the dangerous thoughts would have kept coming, and
Yeah,
something bad might have happened.
right.
From what I understand, that's what they do. They get inside and they break you down and make you think terrible things, and then you do terrible things.
Yeah, and my aunt has even said that she's been having suicidal thoughts off and on recently, and she has to slap herself out of it. She says, "You're not like this. This is not the way that you are," because she's never ever been like that. She said, I had no idea why I was being like that, but it makes perfect sense now.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was definitely an ordeal.
Well, you weren't kidding when you said it would take up about a whole show,
Yeah,
and I won't have to edit much out of this at all. Probably one of the first times that's ever happened.
yeah, and if anybody wants to message me about any of this, any of your listeners, hop on to Reddit. Um, my username is Punisher, PUNISHER X2012. It's from an old comic book character that I liked. I've had that handle for since I was 14, so it's just kind of stuck around.
Also, if it would be easier or more convenient for anybody, um, if anybody wants to go to the blog page, which is wotb.blogspot.com, and they can send a message through the contact forms there, and I can pass it along. Or they can go to the Facebook page, which is facebook.com WOTB show.
Right,
So,
and I know you'll get a hold of me, and I'll be able to answer him back.
right.
But I'm glad he ended up going to the freeze because he was thinking about waiting a few days. But when Janine talked to him today, she said even though it's off of you, you can't go back to that house because it'll jump right back onto you. She said that's where it stays, and if you expose yourself to it again, it'll jump back onto you.
Now, couldn't they just get the house blessed, or do an exorcism just on the house?
She said that this is so powerful, unless you get some serious Roman Catholic priest from Rome in there, all it's going to do is make it mad.
Wow.
My dad said he's seen people scared before. He said that was nothing compared to what Janine was going through. He said that she was terrified. That if there was a window behind her, she would have jumped through it to get away. She turned herself completely around in a corner and wouldn't look at all back behind her. But yeah, that was a... I just don't know how else to describe that.
Yeah. I wonder, like I said a few minutes ago, this stuff seems to be happening more frequently. I wonder if there's any more people out there that stuff like this is happening to, and they're not saying anything, or maybe they don't know who to tell, or maybe they feel like your cousin and, like somebody's going to make fun of them or something. But
I feel like a lot of people don't even know what's going on until it's too late. Like that family in Indiana. If, I'm reading a lot of people saying that it seems like a hoax. Like they might be trying to go out and get money for it because they're doing all these interviews on all these big news stations that are going to pay them to go out there and all that. But then again, you have all these credible eyewitnesses.
right, and we'll get into this in more depth when we do that show, but I mean, some of the witnesses, like the police chief and there was a social worker, stuff actually started following them from the house and, into their daily lives. And
Right.
I mean, there was multiple people from multiple places, people at the hospital, just it seems it's another situation where it seems very unlikely that so many people would get together to do something like that. I mean, it's just like your situation. It just seems very unlikely that everybody would come together and make up a story.
Right. And I mean, like I said, we have absolutely no reason to lie about this. I mean, I'm not one to get on the internet and spend an hour of my time and talk about it for no reason.
Right.
Just to make up a story on the internet. If I were to do that, I'd just write something down and post it somewhere, which I would do in the right forums. I wouldn't try to make it look like something really happened, and it didn't. It was a very trying weekend for all of us.
It sounds like it.
That really bothered my aunt because whatever it was, hated my aunt, but really wanted her daughter and her husband. And she said that made her so mad. Just that something was threatening her family like that.
Right.
But I think it's kind of funny how the human mind works. That's like, well, that couldn't have been footsteps that I heard. But you just gotta go back and think, yeah, it was. There was nothing else I could have been.
Right.
I mean, we went down there, we all heard it. My cousin, my aunt, my Uncle Paul, and me all went downstairs to see if somebody was down there. There was nobody down there. And after everybody had gone back upstairs, I walked up the steps. My cousin said that is exactly what it is. And I heard my uncle out there say that's the noise. Yeah, I don't think I've ever been so scared in my entire life as that. It's just something about something grabbing you.
Right, yeah.
Which, I mean, even after I found out that was my Aunt Arlene, I was like, oh, I just next time tell me when I'm awake. It didn't bother me.
Right, yeah, try to find
after I calmed down, I wasn't scared.
Right, try to find a different way of communicating.
Yeah. Yeah, she says she tickled my foot, then pulled on my leg to get my attention.
Wow.
And so, well, I'm glad she took off once I started screaming, because if I saw her there, I would have probably lost it. Well, got any questions or anything?
No, I think I've exhausted all of my questions, and we're coming up right on an hour. We're about 2 minutes shy.
Yeah.
So, if you want to go ahead and call it a night, and
yeah.
I imagine you're probably tired.
Yeah, I'm pretty beat. I got to sleep a little bit on the way up here since I didn't drive, but I'm still pretty tired here.
All right then. Yeah, if anybody wants to contact you, and they can go to Reddit and look for you, or they can go to the blog page or the Facebook page, and I'll pass any messages along to you.
All right, thank you.
And I will talk to you probably later on about the next show then.
All right.
All right, take it easy.
You too. Bye.
Now, if anybody would like to get a hold of Tyler with questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, you can find him on Reddit under the username PunisherX2012, or if you'd like, you can go ahead and go to the website, which is wotb.blogspot.com. Go ahead and shoot off a message through one of the contact forms on the left-hand side of the page, or you can go to the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/WOTB show. Send a message to me, and I will make sure Tyler gets it. Until next time, guys, keep your eyes and your minds open, or you just might miss what's out there.